I'm Alex Rodriguez.
And I'm Jason Kelly.
From Bloomberg, this is The Deal. Each week, you'll hear us in conversation with business icons.
This show will explore deal-making across sports, media, and entertainment.
That is a harsh lesson in business.
Sports is not as simple as bringing a bunch of big names together.
I didn't want to do another stomp you out speech.
It opened up so many more doors.
The show is called The Deal.
Listen to The Deal.
Listen to The Deal on Spotify.
Hey there. Did you know Kroger always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower than low prices? And when you download the Kroger app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Kroger today. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
This episode is brought to you by Pepsi Wild Cherry. Pepsi Wild Cherry is bursting with delicious cherry flavor and a sweet, crisp taste that gives you more to go wild for. Getting wild may look different these days, but whether it's opting for a solo Friday binge watch or a big night out, everyone can indulge in their wild side with Pepsi Wild Cherry. Also available in Zero Sugar. So grab a Pepsi Wild Cherry and get wild.
Hello there, Duke fans. We are here, episode number 614 of the Duke Basketball Roundup. It is Saturday, March 23rd, 2024, and if you are listening to this podcast, Duke is still in the dance. They beat Vermont last night, 64-47, to move on to the second round of the NCAA tournament. Of course, we are here to talk about all of that, and we have a game coming up against the James Madison Dukes. We will preview that on this episode as well. A lot of stuff to cover. I am Donald Wine. I'm your host for this episode. I have Jason Evans with me. Jason, how are we feeling this morning?
I expected Duke to beat Vermont. I knew that it would be a tough competitive game, and it was. I expected James Madison to beat Wisconsin. Frankly, if you had, Donald, I'm sure you had them in your bracket as well, right?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Folks out there, if you had Wisconsin over James Madison, you haven't been paying attention this season.
We talked about it on the first episode of the season.
Yeah, exactly.
About, what happened when they beat Michigan State? We'll talk about them a little bit later, Jason. Also, Jason, this comes in the heels. I know we didn't mention this because it had not been official by the time we recorded last, but there was no Caleb Foster last night. There will be no Caleb Foster for the NCAA tournament. He is out for the rest of the season with a stress fracture in his ankle. So that obviously shifted a lot of the rotations that we are going to see as we move on in this tournament. But we'll talk about how they did after we get to the headlines. We got quite a few headlines, some before the final whistle, which I know Jason and I kind of look like, let's wait a little bit longer. But
wait. Someone actually sent us headlines. I'm not going to out him. I'm not going to say his name, but someone sent us headlines for the Duke JMU game.
Already.
And I was like, no,
we're not advising that.
Mojo.
We're not advising that. We are focused on the Dukes. But before we get to the Dukes, let's talk about the Vermont Catamounts, the headlines here. Let's start with John Grantland. John Grantland, he wrote a few in, but one that I really liked was Bad Intentions is back. Mitchell leads the way to a first-round victory over Vermont. Jason, I know you like that one.
I like that one, but I liked a different one that John sent us even better. He said, Ben and Jeremy's Roach leads Duke to first round victory over Vermont.
I had that at the bottom. that was going to be my tagline, and you ruined it. But yes,
I'm sorry.
That was the best one I thought of the week, or of the night at least. There was another one, Jason, that I thought was really good. Chris Emershawn, who always writes in and gives us some really good ones. He wrote, Vermont defense can amount to an upset of Devils. And
I love that one.
Can them out. It's very similar to their mascot, the Catamounts, which is really cool. The K-Man, David Kerman, he wrote in, Vermont picks their poison by doubling flip, supporting Devils make them pay. That was a big storyline from the game against Vermont. Chris Bynum also wrote in. Chris Bynum, he again sends a lot of them in, but Chris Bynum had one I thought it was good. Blue Devils wake up from catnap and dispatch Catamounts. Again, play on Vermont's mascot. And then finally, since Jason stole the big John Grantland coup de grace, we're going to go with Jim Baumgartner, who again writes in all the time. Duke delivers defense against difficult Vermont. Jason, I know there's a bunch that we left on the editing room floor. Is there a couple more that you thought were really cool?
There's one other that I really like. Courtney Kruger sent us, I guess this is like a haiku or not. I don't even know the definition. It's sort of a little poem. Courtney wrote, Mitchell makes his mark. McCain brings the pain. Cat M out.
Oh yeah. I don't know. See, I read that as 3 separate headlines, and I was like, oh, these are all pretty decent. We'll see if they make it. But reading it as a haiku or a poem or whatever limerick.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we took English class, Jason. But those are really cool if you kind of put them together. Okay, Jason, let's get into the good part of this. And I want to start with this, Jason. There's a lot of things that happened in this game that I thought were good. But the first thing was the one thing that we had asked about this Duke team entering this game was whether they were going to show up in the first 5 minutes, where they're going to show up and bring the competitive fire and the hustle and just the pride of wearing the Duke jersey that we have not seen over the past week. And I thought, at least for the most part, that was present last night. And I think that's the good thing, is that these guys were, not everything went right, but they were in it. They were hustling for balls. There was a lot of loose balls where we saw a lot of Duke shirts on the floor ending up with steals. They were hustling. They were working hard. And, hats off to Vermont. Vermont is a tough team. We told everybody that this might be a close game, and it very much was for most of the game. And it was because of how they play compared to how we play. And they did a lot of work to really stay in this game. We handed it to them a little bit sometimes, but I thought the competitive fire was there. And I think that was what a lot of Duke fans were looking for. And I'm glad that we saw it, and hopefully it continues the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, and to me, the place that the effort, the fire, the intensity showed up was on defense. The defense was absolutely the story of this game. Look, early on, Duke employed some drop coverage that allowed Vermont to take some threes. And I was like, really? And this is a team, we said in the preview, they love to shoot 3-pointers. What are we doing in drop coverage that's going to give them open threes? But the story of the game to me was the way Duke learned from their mistakes on defense and didn't make the same mistakes over and over and over again. And look, in the post-game commentary, it was John Shire, Mark Mitchell, and Jared McCain. And they all talked about how important it was to stay poised, to learn from our mistakes, to continue communicating. They said that they had spent a lot of time on defense over the past week. I think that this team sort of like ignored the offense and said, we're going to focus on playing good, smart Duke defensive basketball. Mark Mitchell talked about every time there was a stoppage of play, he said they were talking about what they needed to adjust, what they had to do better to shut Vermont down. And it ultimately showed up in the second half, and especially the final 4 minutes and 44 seconds, almost the final 5 minutes of the game. Vermont did not score a single point. Not a single point in the final 5 minutes. You can't win that way, especially when you're down. And
it's very difficult to win when you're not scoring.
Yes, exactly. In the second half, Vermont shoots just 28% and just 16% from three. Duke was contesting everything. Look, late in the first half, Vermont threw in some ridiculous stuff. Some, frankly,
some circus shots. Yeah,
circus shots that had no business going in. You take those away, and this Vermont team hugely struggled on offense the whole game. They average 72 plus points per game. It's not a great offensive team. In the preview, we mentioned that. They're better on defense than they are on offense, but they're a decent offensive team, and they average 72 points per game, 25 points less. They scored only 47, 25 less than their average. This was their season low on offense by 15 points. I have a friend of mine, Jonathan, who's a very smart Duke fan, who texts with me during the game, and he pointed out, he sent after the game, all the efficiency numbers, the offensive efficiency numbers from Ken Palm for every single Vermont game this season. And on Ken Pomeroy, 100 is an average game. If your efficiency is 100, that is the average for a college basketball team. And Vermont was 100 plus in almost every game this season. They only had one game all year where they were less than 94 efficiency. Against Duke, they posted a 78. Mm-hmm. We owned them defensively. They struggled all game to get the shots they wanted. I thought Duke played incredibly smart on defense. And when we get to the individual players, I'm going to mention a few guys, but I'm going to say one right off the bat. Kyle Filipowski protecting the paint and when he wasn't protecting the paint, repeatedly guarding like their quickest point guard. Like I must have seen Kyle on this guy like a half dozen or more times. And every time I thought, uh-oh. And every time I was wrong. I thought everybody had a great defensive game. I thought Flip especially had an outstanding defensive game.
And he had to step up because he was put in positions that are not natural to him, right? It's not natural to see Kyle Filipowski guarding a guard on the perimeter. That just is not something that we've set ourselves up to do all year, but he had to do that because we talked about the 5-out offense that they like to run, where everybody ends up on the perimeter at some point and they either try to shoot a three or try to do a backdoor cut. He did some great work on backdoor cuts too. I believe they did like 2 or 3 of them. They didn't get a single point off of any of them because he was either able to hedge and come back and block, or there was the one where he kind of let him go by and Jeremy Roach got the block on him on the backdoor cut. So I really liked how they utilized each other on defense for that. But Jason, they did it without fouling for the most part, right?
Exactly.
They didn't get into foul trouble. I think Jeremy Kane was the only one that had 4 fouls. Everyone else was not in foul trouble. They shot Vermont. I keep saying Virginia. Vermont shot 5 for 20 from 3-point land. We talked about how they shoot a lot of threes, but if they're not going to make them, then that was a huge opportunity for us. They shot 47% from 2-point. So they were under 50% in all statistical categories. And on top of that, Jason, I think what was awesome about our defense is that when we saw opportunities to take advantage, we did. We had 5 blocks, and more importantly, we had 9 steals.
Yeah,
that is a huge number for Duke. I mean, usually we're getting maybe 5 or 6 steals, but never approaching double digits, because we're usually a team that likes to keep teams in front of them and make them take a bad shot. We were forcing the issue. We were going the other way, and I know a lot of those possessions didn't work out. We'll talk about those a little bit later. But I thought on the whole, our defense was excellent to shut down an offense that we knew could score from 3. And in the NCAA tournament, as you know, if teams start hitting threes, that's when momentum just elevates even more than it does during the regular season.
You know, the other side of that was Duke was forcing those turnovers against a Vermont team that is known for not turning the ball over at all, which was really impressive. And then the other side of all that is the other side of the effort that was going on defense was the rebounding. Duke out-rebounded them 38-26 by 12 rebounds. That's a big number. Duke had 9 offensive rebounds against one of the best defensive. We said, I think they're like top 5 defensive rebounding team in the country, and Duke gets 9 offensive rebounds against them. By the way, we talk about the stat all the time. Duke is now 20-2 when out rebounding our opponent, and that's going to be key against James Madison as well.
Let's switch a little bit to the offense overall again before we get to the individual players. Another thing, Jason, that we said that Vermont does not allow teams to do well is get assists and make passes and get baskets off passes. We had 11 assists on 19 field goals. And again, I know the offense was sputtering at times, but 11 assists on 19 field goals means we were trying to find each other, for baskets. There was a lot of those like dump passes into the paint to Mark Mitchell. I know we'll talk about him quite a bit with those dump passes over the defense into Mark Mitchell. And Mark Mitchell, all he had to do was turn around and dunk it. And we had a couple of those where it was easy to get guys into situations where all they had to do was just turn around and lay it in, or turn around and hit a jumper. But I thought it was great the way we were able to try and find people on all of these situations. Even the shots that we missed, it was set up because we had good ball movement and we were able to move the ball around. And Jason, another thing that I thought on offense that we did well that Vermont usually doesn't allow teams to do is get to the line. 29 free throws. We made 20 of them. But Vermont traditionally does not let people get to the line because they don't foul. They just keep people in front of them. They try to make you take a bad shot and get the rebound and go. They have been very good at doing that all year. We were able to get to the line early and often, kind of like Chicago politics. We were able to do that. And at the end of the day, I think that was also a key difference because it really made it where they had to adjust how they play defense, and we took advantage of that as well.
Yeah, and I mean, look, the biggest thing to me was the fact that Duke was making the extra pass again and again and again. We had a real plan, especially early on. I felt like we had a plan on offense. We were attacking the basket and then looking to make the extra pass. And that is why Mark Mitchell, had all those points, had a flurry of points like in the first 10 or 12 minutes. I want to say that we kind of forgot about that plan in the back half of the first half. I don't know if we forgot about it or if Vermont did a nice job of adjusting, but the offense sagged a bit. I mean, there was a stretch there like a 5 or 7 minute stretch in the back half of the first half where you were like, wait a second, this game that looked like we were going to, walk away from, it got closer and it got uncomfortable. You knew Vermont was going to play hard and that Duke wasn't going to play perfect the whole game. But I'm glad that it felt like Duke found that plan again in the second half. And Donald, if I may, can I advance to talking about individual players?
Real quick before you do,
Yeah.
I wanted to make a note because I just quickly back on the defense. We talked about all the things that the defense did super well. I think the best part of it, Jason, is that in crunch time, you mentioned the last 5:01 of the game, Vermont didn't score a single point. Vermont only scored 18 points in the second half. I thought that was incredible. And again, when it came down to it, and when everyone's like, everyone got the alerts from March Madness and from ESPN, like, oh, upset alert, Vermont's close. They never got closer than that the rest of the game. Like they were down 5 at that point, and then slowly but surely we just kept, we kept making points where we could, but we kept shutting them down on defense. And I think that was the key for us getting out of here and getting to the second round.
Okay. As I move to the individual players, I'm going to start with our backcourt because those guys, we raked them over the coals after that NC State game. They were terrible. They were terrible against NC State. Now, I'm not saying they were like I'm not saying they were perfect in this game. And our shooting percentages, frankly, weren't that great. But McCain, Proctor, and Roach were way better in this game. I thought, especially in the second half. Jeremy Roach took over at times in that second half. He had 10 points in the second half, mostly in the middle of the half, helping Duke stretch the lead out to double digits. Look, Jeremy Roach, it was only 3 of 10 from the field, but he took the ball hard to the hole again and again and again and got fouled a ton. Jeremy Roach takes 9 free throws in this game. You talked about Duke's advantage at the free throw line. He hit 7 of 9 at the line. A lot of that was Jeremy Roach getting into the teeth of the defense and drawing fouls. Roach also had 5 rebounds and 4 assists, almost a 10-5-5 game for him. Jared McCain, look, missed some shots that he makes. There was a 3-pointer he missed at one point where I was like, dude, come on. Really?
He also had 2 that again went like 3/4 of the way down and popped back out, and you're like, okay, what? It was again during a stretch where we're like, oh come on, nothing's falling, like even that's not going down.
Yeah,
but I love the resiliency from this kid.
Yeah, so Jared McCain ends up with 15 points, showed some real creativity. He is getting more and more aggressive with his drives, and I'm gonna give it away now. I'll be mentioning his name when we get to the play of the game.
Same.
Yep. And it's worth noting that McCain had 6 rebounds and 3 assists. Our guards shared the ball really well. They went to the boards really hard. The effort was there in this game that we haven't really seen from Duke as much as we would like lately. And then lastly, Tyrese Proctor. Tyrese has become shot happy lately. He has double-digit shot attempts in each of our last 4 games. He's averaging 7.5 3-point field goal attempts over our last 4 games. 7.5 3-point field goal attempts per game. I would much, much rather see this version of Tyrese than the one we've seen at times this year where he defers a lot. I like him being more aggressive. I like him hunting his shot. By the way, I'm not sure if you noticed, Duke had Roach bringing the ball up the floor and Tyrese playing on the wing a lot more this game than we've seen in some recent games. I don't know, part of it may be sharing the load a little bit because these guys are all playing such heavy minutes with Caleb Foster injured. But I kind of like that because Tyrese can be very, very dangerous on the wing.
And it threw off Ian Eagle because at times he thought that Tyrese Proctor was Jared McCain.
I know there was a play early in the game, like I think Tyrese's first basket. They were talking all about Jared McCain. They're like, he's like California and stuff. I'm like,
Sacramento, California kid. Yeah,
right. He's from a lot further west than California, buddy.
About 10,000 miles further west, but and south. But no, I think the thing about it is that they all fed off of each other. And I think there was points even where I was like, oh, McCain, that's a great shot. And I was like, oh, wait, that's Proctor. That's not Proctor's job. Usually Proctor's the one that's distributing the ball to a Jared McCain or to a Jeremy Roach. So I liked how they all kind of took each other's roles, again, in the absence of Caleb Foster, and kind of said, okay, let's distribute what Caleb Foster brought to the table amongst the 3 of us. And that may mean, a couple of us taking the ball up. There's even time, Jason, that Flip took the ball up and started the offense. And there's a point where I was like, yo, Flip, give the ball up. And he's like, oh no, he's like running the play. And like, he called out the play, passed the ball and kind of did some thing. Cause it was like a 4-out type of deal. But I thought the guys on the outside played super well. And Jason, you mentioned it didn't shoot well, but they all contributed in different parts, right? Jeremy Kane with 6 rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal. Jeremy Roach, as you mentioned, close to a 10.55 with a block and a steal. Tyrese Proctor had 4 rebounds. So these guys contributed on both offense and defense. And we mentioned that the perimeter defense needed to be special. These guys on defense, I thought, raised their game a little bit. Jeremy Kane, most people aren't talking about him as a great defender yet. I think he's going to get there, but I thought he did very well yesterday when he was on the ball guarding a couple of people. And even if he got past, it was in a situation when he was basically flowing the guy into another part of the defense that the guy, that the Vermont guy had to shoot in. So I thought they did well at feeding off of each other and on defense, calling each other out and figuring out where they were. And as you mentioned, Jason, the adjustments that they made over the course of the game, I thought was really good.
All right. So I got a question. We're talking about perimeter players. Are we putting Jalen Blakes in the good or the bad?
You know what? So I'm going to talk
now.
about
I want to do them now.
Let's talk about this in the good. The fact is that Jalen Blakes came in and was the hornet's nest that we have asked him to be on defense.
Oh my God.
I need to look,
was it 3 straight steals on 3 straight possessions?
It was 3 steals and 4 possessions.
Wow.
3 steals and 4 possessions. And we'll talk about the bad, if he hangs onto the ball, it's not necessarily you can't do this. It's more of a, man, I wish he had, was able to control 2 of those steals so that we could get points off of them. It felt like Vermont got more points off of those steals than we did, but I forget the bad part. The good part is that he came in ready to be the hornet's nest, and he was in whoever was in front of him with the ball. He was in their business, and he was stealing their lunch money. And I thought
it was the steals on passes. It was the steals on passes that were so impressive, like getting his hands on balls and anticipating passes. This is the Jalen Blakes that is so exciting and fun to watch. Look, I'm gonna go ahead and say it. The anticipation is that he's going to get his degree and probably transfer someplace where he can get more time next year. I don't blame Jalen Blakes for that at all. I will wish him all the luck in the world. And I'm going to go ahead and make a prediction right now. Wherever he transfers, he's going to lead that team in steals and turnovers.
It's forget the turnovers part, right? Again, we'll talk about that later. But I think focusing on the good part here is that Jalen Blakes came in and he came in and we've seen this all season, but like a lot of guys over the last week, we came in and we just didn't see a lot of the Jalen Blakes we saw all season. That was a more aggressive Jalen Blakes that we've seen all season, especially as you mentioned, he's the type of guy. Yeah.
He's a disruptor and that matters. It just gets teams out of their flow.
He's a disruptor with the ball in front of him, right? We have not seen a lot of him, again, running and stealing balls from, entering the passing lane and going the other way with it. Like, he's the type of guy who's like just going to disrupt you with the ball in front of you, probably try and slap it out of your hands, but otherwise make you have to restart your offense or go in a different direction and take a shot that you don't want to take. He's not a guy that's going to be like he's sitting there on the wing just waiting like a cornerback in football, waiting to pick the ball off and go do a pick six the other way. That's what I liked about it, the aggression. He showed that he was like, hey, I can do this too. And even on those 3 steals, right, it made it where when he was in the game, they had to adjust quickly because they were like, we did not expect an aggressive Jalen Blakes to be all up in our business and all up in the passing lanes as well. So I really enjoyed the fact that he came in ready to work, and that energy level. There was a couple of times in the first half where it kind of dissipated. Coming off the bench, he brought that spark. Him and Ryan Young maybe they weren't able to contribute in the stat sheets as much as they normally do, but they contributed in the energy department for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. By the way, I wanted to mention that Ryan Young just looks like he's working hard every second he's in the game.
Yeah, he's got to be tired. Like, get him an ice pack.
You can tell that guy is playing like it's his last game, and it is. His eligibility is all done. But just I love the effort. Do you see how quickly there was a loose ball near him at one point? You see how fast he got on that floor? He was like, that was his last supper, his last meal, and he was going after it. He was hungry. And I love that from Ryan Young. You get that from him all the time, and it just sets a good example for everybody else on the team. Look, we're sort of transitioning here to the big guys, and I'm going to start with Kyle Filipowski because Listen to this line: 12 rebounds, 4 of those offensive rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 3 block shots, only 1 turnover. I'm not going to talk about the shots. We'll get to that later. Mm-hmm. But man, I think that what he did was truly impressive, because this is a guy who's used to getting the ball a ton and taking a lot of shots. He's Duke's leading scorer. He is one of the best offensive post players in the entire country. And for him to not force anything, for him to be like, I'm okay setting screens and serving as a decoy and passing out of double teams, that takes mental fortitude. It is not easy for I can't imagine late in that game, in that second half, when he was like, I've only attempted 1 shot in this game. He knows he's only attempted 1 shot.
And it was that layup that just kind of rolled around the rim and rolled off. And I think he had to go to the bench like soon after that. And he kind of sat down. He was just like, dang, man. Like, he knew that was his chance to, like, get involved. And again, I like the fact that despite all that, we've seen some times where he's gotten visibly frustrated at how the game has come to him. That this was the game where it did not feel like he was frustrated at all. He was very much locked in. And even when he said, oh, they're going to double and triple team me whenever I receive the ball, he decided he needed to do a different flip, right? He flipped the script on him, to borrow the pun, and passed the ball out, was active in other ways. And I thought, again, the way that these guys shared their responsibilities, even if one thing wasn't going their way, they were able to participate in other attributes that is necessary to win a game. I thought that was great.
Yeah, and my overall point about all that was the fact that he never forced any shots, the fact that he played that incredible defense on their quick perimeter guys. We talked about it a little bit. I mean, think about what it takes to be a guy who ordinarily is the focus of the offense. In this game, you're only taking 1 shot, but you maintain your focus and have one of your best games of the season on defense. Duke was able to switch all 5 positions on defense anytime they wanted to, and never allow it to put us in a situation where we're in a bad defensive matchup, because Flip was able to guard anybody. Well, look, we already know Mark Mitchell can guard anyone on the floor, but Flip was able to guard anybody. And frankly, they didn't have enough height. They didn't have enough post presence to take advantage when when their big men were switched onto guards. Like, they don't really even have big men, to be honest. So that was essential to Duke's defensive game plan and Duke's defensive success. And I think more than anyone else, it flows from Flip's ability to play D the way he did in this game.
Can we now talk about the KenPom MVP, Mark Mitchell? Because I know it's taken us a little bit to get to him, but it's for good reason. Man, when John Grantland sent in the email that said bad intentions is back, bad intentions was present on the floor in the name of Mark Mitchell. 15 points, 6 for 9 from the floor, 5 rebounds, 1 block, 1 steal, 0 turnovers, and I think at least 4 or 5 dunks that he was wide open for, and maybe 1 or 2 where he was kind of contested.
It was 5 dunks. His first 5 field goals were all dunks.
And
high percentage shot. That's a high percentage shot, Donald.
Very high percentage. I think he was 100% on those dunks. So I think that's good. But Jason, I think the bad intentions portion is this. Mark Mitchell, I think at one point early on in the game, he looked around and realized that the only 2 people that are taller than him are Kyle Filipowski and Ryan Young, and those are his teammates. So he's like, great. So now that my teammates are the only guys bigger than me, let me go out and just destroy these people. And there's a point where that first dunk where he kind of took the ball and you saw him just kind of power dribble, and you were like, I think the whole gym was probably like, oh, he's going up and he's not coming back down. And when he did that, you could tell he had this look on his face like, oh, I can get this whenever I want. And so he did. Like, it felt like every time he was able to, again, roll into space, get the ball, collect it. We've seen this year sometimes where he's kind of had some butterfingers and traffic, kind of not been able to hold on to the basketball, but he was able to do that last night. He catches the ball, turns around, and he puts himself in a position where the only thing he could do is just go up and dunk it. And whether a Vermont player came with him or not, it was going in. And I think he was able to find those areas on the floor where he was wide open. And then even in those times where he was contested, he was able to control the ball, collect himself, and then go up over the guy because he knew he could. And I thought that was the great thing. It's funny, we've looked at the KenPom MVP a lot more lately because of the fact that Mark Mitchell had that stretch where it was like 3 or 4 games in a row
Yeah.
that he was named it for good reason. This was another one of those games. The bad intentions Mark Mitchell is what we love to see, because I think that it helps spur everybody else. And dunks, just like 3-pointers in the NCAA tournament, can breed a whole lot of momentum. And whenever he got the ball, everyone kind of said, okay, if Mark Mitchell is getting these easy buckets, then this means that this game is for the taking, because there's going to be a lot more open shots that we can take and make.
Yeah, and I felt like the thing about Mark was he took advantage of his size and athleticism really nicely against a team that's a little bit smaller. And again, that is something that I think he'll probably be able to do against James Madison as well. And I just love the fact that the team made those extra passes early, and those extra passes ended up in Mark's hands again and again and again. And and again, he plays excellent defense in this game. And did some work on the boards for us as well with 5 rebounds. And just felt like he was fighting and working hard the whole game. And effort, we go back to it again and again and again. Effort is one of the most important things for this Duke team, and Mitchell was a huge part of a strong effort.
Jason, I think that's a good opportunity. I think there's a lot of good that happened in this game. Let's work on the things, or let's talk about the things that we need to improve on. And again, this wasn't a perfect game. I think the one thing the overall theme about things that need to improve is, I know we're going to be playing another double-digit seed in James Madison tomorrow night. We cannot let them hang in there. The opportunity for an upset exists in the NCAA tournament because good teams let teams that aren't as good as them hang in the game for whatever reason, whether it's through a lot of threes, whether it's through bad defense, whether it's through fouls, whatever that is. It felt like, I think why it was frustrating for a lot of fans for the first 30 minutes of this game is, despite the great defense we were playing, we just kept letting Vermont hang in there. Yes, I think in the first half, the circus shots really helped with that frustration, because again, we had, several possessions where we, played 29.8 seconds of excellent defense, and they throw up a shot and it goes in, and there's nothing you can do about that. But I think the part was our offense sputtering kept Vermont in there, because there's a lot of times where we held Vermont without a bucket for like 5, 6, 7 possessions in a row, but we weren't getting them on the other end. And because of that, when Vermont gets a shot, all of a sudden we had some 10-point leads turn into 5-point leads very quickly. But I will say that we never wavered, right? It never got the closest I think it got in the second half was like 4 or 5 points. Every single time we were able to either take a timeout, or there was like a media timeout, we were able to recover. But I think letting a team hang in there is the worst thing you should do in the NCAA tournament, because a team can get you. We saw it all day the last couple of days, that teams who were able to hang in there have opportunities to make that one shining moment. And they were able to, but fortunately for us, we were able to hold them off, especially down the stretch.
Yeah, actually, they cut it to 2 at one point early in that second half, and they actually had a possession. They had a possession with the ball, only down 2 points. And I was like, this is a pretty key possession. But Duke played good defense and really stretched it out, from there. Jared McCain hits a 3 right after they were up by 2. McCain hit a 3-pointer to put us up 5. We really never looked back after that. Look, if we're in the bad, I think let's start with the Kyle Filipowski situation.
Yeah,
because we got emails. Our fans, Duke's fans, very divided on whether this was a good or bad game from Flip. I'm in the camp of it was a good game. But you have to talk about the fact that he only took 1 shot, and our fans are wondering, was that because he was passive? Or was it because he was allowing his teammates to shine and didn't mind that he was getting double teamed because that meant someone else was open? I will say I'm putting some of it on the team, not on Flip, because I thought they did a terrible job of finding him when he was open, when he was in the post. There were times he was in the post on significantly smaller players, and I saw him calling for it and guys just not passing it to him. Now, I'm not saying we ignored him, because Flip had the ball in his hands a pretty fair amount, and we were still running a lot of the offense to him, but not as much as we do sometimes. And I thought, especially like when he and Mark Mitchell were doing the high-low post game, like Mark Mitchell, there were a couple times I was like, Flip is right there, Mark. What are you doing? And Mark didn't pass it to him. I don't want to see that against James Madison. I hope that the fact that Flip only had 1 shot in this game means he's going to have I don't know, 15 plus against James Madison. I'm looking forward to him dropping a 25, 30 pointer on James Madison. I think that can make up for what happened in this game when he only got a few points. Go out there and get us 25 plus. Flip, you got it in your bag. We know you do. But it was just interesting to see, why and how Duke was failing to find our All-American.
So I have a slightly different take on it. I'm with you. I agree that it was a good game for Kyle Filipowski, despite the fact that he only took one field goal attempt. Here's why. You want someone to get out of a double team, make them pay for it by doing it, right? So the idea is if we were making more three-pointers with the guy that was open, because Flip was, when he got the ball, he was finding guys open for shots. If they are knocking those down, guess what ends very quickly? Double teams. Yeah. Because all of a sudden now you got to go, oh, now I can't leave my guy because he's hot. And then you take advantage from there. But I think, Flip, as you mentioned, he had one turnover. I think the one turnover was actually on a bad pass where he tried to catch it with one hand because he was falling away from him, and he wasn't able to catch it cleanly, and it was taken from him. So I thought other than that, he did very well at receiving the ball in the post, even in traffic, and trying to find his guys to do it. And I think what he didn't want to do, because he's so tall, there's that stigma. If a guy is super tall and way taller than everybody else, that if he runs into someone else, is going to be an offensive foul, no matter where he is, because they're going to say this bigger guy is trying to bully his way to. It's the Shaq syndrome, essentially. And I know that he probably had that in the back of his mind of, I can't just turn around and roll over these dudes to the basket because they're going to get me with an offensive foul, and I can't pick up cheap fouls. So I think Flip did very well in that regard. I think the bad part of it is, yes, we need to get him more active on the offensive end, because that helps balance our team out. And I think other guys picked up the slack, again, namely in the paint, Mark Mitchell. But I think getting Flip the ball a little bit more is going to help. And I know James Madison they're a little bit taller, so they're going to probably play a little more straight up with us. So that's the key. I think because Vermont was so tiny in the paint, that they had to kind of neutralize Flip by double teaming him. But that also means that whoever's leaving, they got to be like, yo, ball open, and they got to make them pay for it. I think that was the key here. I mentioned when we talk about the keeping them in the game, I mentioned in the first 10 minutes of the second half, we only allowed 8 points, which is terrific, but we only scored 12. So it wasn't so you do all that. Like, we've seen some stretches where we've held teams under 10 points over a 10-minute period, and then we score like 26 or 30. That's where your ball game gets over. That's when you can call in Spencer Hubbard with 5 minutes left, right? But this time around, we just couldn't make those shots. And I think it also leads to the fact that Flip getting double teamed all game was because they knew they could do it, because we weren't making enough shots for them to get out of it. And I think that's the key here.
Yeah, it was a pedestrian shooting game for us, just 33% from three. We had 48% on our twos, which is not dreadful, but not great. Also, I want to go to the free throw line. We were a little less than 70%. Again, not awful, but not great.
69%, nice. But on the free throw line, you want to be nicer.
Yeah. Mark Mitchell, just 3 of 6. And it's worth noting, every single guy on the team, every player on the team who went to the free throw line missed at least one free throw. So it was spread out among a bunch of different guys. And that was troubling to me. Look, the only other thing, Donald, that I have in the bad is our bench play. And look, we already mentioned, Jalen Blakes gave us, and I'll let you do more on Blakes, but Blakes gave us the positive of the steals, but the negative of the turnovers that followed it. Ryan Young, as we mentioned, working really hard, but frankly, Sean Stewart again showed the butterfingers. Feels like every time the ball goes to him, it's fumbled a little bit. Sometimes we lose it, sometimes we don't, but it disrupts the offense. It disrupts his ability to grab those rebounds and those stellar rebounds. By the way, I'm sorry, he went up for one rebound and they were underneath him, and the refs called him for a travel or something.
No, they called him for. I think they called him for a foul.
No, they didn't call him for. The ball ended up going out of bounds. I think that was it.
Oh, that's what. Yeah.
But it was. I was like, really? Not going to allow him to land? He's 2 feet higher than everybody else. You got to let him land. But by the way, and Sean needs to spend the entire offseason catching a heavy ball and never once dropping it or something like that. But our bench play just wasn't. Look, you just like it to be a little bit more. John Shire in the post game mentioned, he talked about matchups. and how important matchups are to determining how you're going to use your bench. And he specifically mentioned that TJ Power didn't get in the game, but he said TJ needs to stay ready. I think a team that really spreads you out on offense, the way Vermont does, Donald, you've talked about this extensively about the way they play offense. That would have been a difficult matchup, a difficult defensive matchup for TJ. And I think that's why he didn't get in there. I think there will be opportunities. There will be games. There'll be times where TJ is going to get in there. This is just, again, a difficult matchup for him. And then you had Jalen Blakes playing so well defensively that I think it was harder to find time for TJ because you wanted Blakes to bring that defensive intensity and that contribution on defense. So the perimeter minutes just weren't there for TJ.
Yeah, and getting back to Jalen Blakes again, I think he takes that first steal and he goes the length of the court and he lays it in, and we're like, I'm just like out of my chair, like, all right, let's go. Okay. Then he does it again, and I think he kind of had oh wow, I can do this again in his eyes, and he just couldn't. It was the same spot on the floor too, Jason, because on the second time or the third steal where he dribbles high and it goes out of his hands again for a steal, you could tell he was looking at the floor, at the floorboard right there. He kind of looked like what is going on here, because it was literally the exact same spot on the floor that he takes a dribble. All of a sudden it's a power dribble, and it goes 5 feet over his head, and he loses the ball. So I'm not. It's one of those things where, if he can hang on to the basketball, maybe we get some points out of it. And I joked that I think Vermont got more points on those two steals than we did, because they went the other way and were able to, I think, make a basket or two off of them. But
I don't. They may
I think
have
they hit
one.
a three. They hit a three on one. I remember that because I remember we called the timeout, and like you could tell Jalen Blakes was just kind of like looking at his hand and looking at the floor like, I don't know what happened there. But I again, I love the hustle. Just hang on to the basketball. I think the last thing that I had.
Wait, Donald, I'm going to correct you. You're wrong, because James Madison had 0 points off turnovers, and those possessions.
Oh, I'm sorry, Vermont. You meant yes.
Yeah, Vermont. Sorry, God, I got so many teams in my head right now.
Yeah,
Vermont had 0 points off of turnovers in this entire game. And Blake's was losing those balls on so I don't think they ever scored off of it. I was kind of keeping track of it. I was sort of like, oh, we got a steal. Oh, we turned it over. And then I was like, all right, are they going to get it was kind of a push, but it was a incredibly chaotic push.
Yes. Like it was like a minute. It was like a minute of like just sheer chaos.
Yeah. I think both teams got a little discombobulated because of Jalen Blake's being incredible at one end and then incredibly weird at the other end.
Yeah. The last thing I had in the bag very quickly is that I mentioned that we had 11 assists on 19 made baskets, but only 3 guys got assists in this game: Flip, Roach, and McCain. So again, I think that's a testament maybe to the shots not falling, because again, I thought a lot of people were moving the ball around, but it'd be nice to have more than 3 guys get assists in the game. And I think it wasn't just because those 3 were the only ones active, but it just means we need to continue to knock down our shots. Jason, we're running a little long because I know we got to preview James Madison, but first let's talk about the play of the game. I think we got the same one, so I'm going to let you go first.
Yeah, it's that little running hook shot that Jared McCain hit with the shot clock almost burned. It put us up 7 points. That was like the moment where I went, okay. It was like after that shot, not that the game was over by any stretch of the imagination, but it was the moment that I was like, all right, I feel really good about Duke finishing off this game. And that was a shot. I don't think we've seen that from Jared McCain all season. Really creative. By the way, I just wanted to shout out, with about 4 minutes left, Tyrese Proctor hit a long 2-pointer. This is not my play of the game, but it's my post play of the game, because as he went back down the court, they showed his face. Reese was rocking some awesome stink face. I mean, he had some serious stink face going on. And I loved that. That almost earned him play of the game, because I was just like, that stink face is just nasty.
What I liked, my play of the game was also McCain's hook shot. But what I liked about it was that, again, in the first half, we had a couple of backbreakers from Vermont in the form of those circus shots at the end of the shot clock. So when we were able to deliver one of our own, it really set them back. And like you mentioned, it was the moment where I think a lot of Duke fans go, okay, we're about to win this game. This, like, we're making our own backbreaking, end of shot clock shots. Cool. Now we're even. And with that neutralized, we can get this game out of the way.
Yeah. Hey, my last thing before we take a break and then preview James Madison. We're in the NCAA tournament. Just win, baby. Survive and advance.
Survive and advance. That is a mantra.
Duke has now won 8 straight opening round games. And yeah, it's easy to go, oh, opening round, you're always a high seed. Just go ahead and ask Kentucky and Auburn how they feel about winning opening round games as a high seed. And this is it. Any win in the NCAA tournament is a good win. Any double-digit win is a really good win. I will take it any day of the week. And I actually think this was a game where, we spent most of our time on the good. This was a game where there was a lot of positive for the Blue Devils. I feel pretty good about where this team is heading forward.
Again, I think it all goes back to the fact that we showed the fire, we showed the competitive spirit, we came ready to play. And it doesn't have to be a perfect game in the tournament. As long as that W is next to your win column, you're still dancing. And we like having our dancing shoes on. Let's take a quick break. On the other side, we are going to preview tomorrow's game against James Madison. And also we'll take a look at the brackets. Ain't nobody's perfect. So where did yours lie? We'll see after this. This episode of the Duke Basketball Roundup is brought to you by BetterHelp.
Hey, this is Jason Evans of the DBR podcast. I'd be lying if I told you I didn't have stuff to work on all my life. I've had great passion for the things I wanted to do, like this podcast, and not so much for the things I was supposed to do. Honestly, it used to get me in trouble sometimes. But some years ago, I started talking about it with a therapist, and it actually really helped me out. I've learned to embrace the supposed to, not just the want to. And frankly, my life is better for it. Just ask my wife.
Jason, getting advice from people who know how to listen is what BetterHelp is all about. It is therapy for the internet era, completely online, making it convenient and flexible to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire and you get matched to a professional licensed therapist. And you can switch therapists anytime you want. So learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/Duke Roundup today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Duke Roundup. Hey, this is Donald Wine from the Duke Basketball Roundup, and y'all know me. I'm always on the go. So sometimes it's not feasible for me to cook up a big meal. That's why I'm excited that we're partnering with Factor Meals. What I'm most excited about, first off, eating better is easy with Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals. Every fresh, never frozen meal is chef-crafted, dietitian approved, and ready to go in just 2 minutes. Yeah, 2 minutes. Also, they have so many options, over 35 each week. They include Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto options. Finally, they have flexible plans, which is perfect for someone like me who travels often. I can get as little or as much as I need every week, and I can pause and reschedule deliveries anytime I need. Jason, this is right up my alley.
Oh man, it really is. And if you're looking, by the way, for fast premium options with no cooking required, ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes, head to factormeals.com/DukeBB50. Again, use that code DukeBB50 to get 50% off. Come on, 50% off? That code DukeBB50 at factormeals.com. We've done the math, man. It checks out. Factor is less expensive than takeout, and every meal is dietitian approved to be nutritious and delicious.
Jason, I just ordered some meals, and I can't wait to get them in and be able to eat these healthy portion meals without having to break out the pots and pans. So check out Factor Meals today. And remember, use the code DukeBB50 to get 50% off.
I'm Alex Rodriguez.
And I'm Jason Kelly.
From Bloomberg, this is The Deal. Each week, you'll hear us in conversation with business icons.
This show will explore deal-making across sports, media, and entertainment.
That is a harsh lesson in business.
Sports is not as simple as bringing a bunch of big names together.
I didn't want to do another stomp you out speech.
It opened up so many more doors.
The show is called
The Deal.
Listen to The Deal.
Listen to The Deal on Spotify.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
All right, Jason, we are back, and it is time to preview our game coming up on Sunday night against the James Madison Dukes. That's right. Duke versus the Dukes, 5:15 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday on CBS.
Hey, Donald, it was pointed out to me that you're going to hear a lot of "Let's go Duke" and "Let's go Dukes" chants in the stadium on Sunday. You're not going to be able to tell who the crowd is cheering for because the chants sound, because James Madison says "Let's go Dukes, let's go Dukes." You're going to have a terrible time figuring out who's cheering for who.
As long as there's no trading places references during the game, that would be great. It was the Dukes. We don't need that. But other than that, because that means that James Madison's probably doing something good. We don't need that. But Jason, let's talk first about James Madison and how they got here. They're the 12th seed out of the Sun Belt Conference. They got here by beating number 5 Wisconsin in the first round. They are 32-3 on the season. They are 57th in KenPom. This is not your normal 12 seed. And we have seen that, Jason, because, of course, they hit the ground running on the very first night of college basketball season, going to the Breslin Center in East Lansing and beating Michigan State in OT. We talked about it that night when we were recapping our opening game. We were like, man, did you see what this James Madison team did? Man, they could be special. Michigan State is actually one of 2 teams they faced in the regular season that is in the top 100 in KenPom. The other one was Appalachian State, who beat them twice in the regular season, and App State finished first in the conference. Southern Miss was JMU's other loss in the season. So, funny enough, they were 13-0 in their non-conference schedule. Their 3 losses came in conference. That's interesting for a team like this, especially a team who's in a mid-major. Again, they finished 15-3 in the Sun Belt. They won their conference tournament to make it to the big dance. Jason, I think the one thing as you enter about this team, we just beat Vermont, who had the 3rd longest win streak in the country at 10 games. This team, James Madison, has the longest current active win streak in D1, now at 14 straight. So we're going to have to beat another hot team if we want to make it to the Sweet 16 in Dallas. And if you did not watch the game against Wisconsin that came on right after ours, it was all James Madison, it felt like, from the very beginning. They out-rebounded James Madison. They had a lot of guys produce. We'll talk about some of the individual players. They didn't shoot well, but they had 14 steals in their first 19 turnovers. 14 steals. We just talked about how great it was.
That's a sick number.
We just talked about how great it was that we had 9 steals against Vermont. They had 14 steals. And I think that is an incredible stat that we're going to have to look at. Jason, let's get into the metrics. I know there is a bunch of things that they do well. So let's talk about some of those things. When you look at the team as the eye test, it looks like they run quite a bit, but it's not as high a tempo as you would think about when you watch them play.
Yeah, look, they're a fast-ish team. The tempo is 62nd fastest in the country, and about equally fast on offense and defense. Again, fast-ish, but not like one of these teams that is racing all over the place. As you mentioned, they are KenPom's number 57 team, the 65th best offense, the 54th best defense. So sort of like the tempo, they are equally good, but not like great elite on either end of the floor. A lot of that is because look, it's a tough team to assess because, like you mentioned, they just haven't played that many games against really good teams. So they've mostly feasted on a pretty mediocre schedule. Frankly, their non-conference schedule was like among the bottom 10 or 20 worst schedules in the country. Other than that game against Michigan State, they didn't play anybody else of note for the most part. And I think a huge key in this game is the 3-point line. So James Madison hits better than 36% of their 3-pointers. But where they are truly elite is defending the 3-point line. Their opponents hit less than 29% of their threes. James Madison is the 2nd best team in the country, number 2 in the land at defending the 3-point line. So you've got a Duke team that's top 20 at 3-point shooting against a JMU team that is 2nd at defending that line. And that is going to be a huge, huge key for this game. Look, against Wisconsin, Wisconsin's Max Klesmit sort of went off for threes late in the game. He had 5 3-pointers against James Madison. It kind of made the game look closer than it was. That's not ordinarily something teams are able to do. If you watch that game and you think, oh, we're going to be able to get threes the way this guy did for Wisconsin, That is not the way James Madison ordinarily plays. And I think a lot of that was a factor of the game being not super competitive in the second half when James Madison really was winning fairly comfortably. It is hugely important for Duke against James Madison to be able to convert some three-pointers. We've struggled a little bit at it lately, and we've got to get better at it because James Madison that is just where they are truly great defensively. Let me give you a little bit of other defensive stuff on them. They're very, very good at contesting shots. They don't block a lot of shots because they're not super big, but they will contest your shots and not allow you to hit two-pointers or three-pointers very well, as I mentioned. They will turn you over. They are really good. 17th best in the country, top 20 in the country at steal percentage. And like you mentioned, they had an absurd 14 steals against Wisconsin. That's crazy. And they're one of these teams that forces you to go one-on-one. One of these teams that doesn't allow you to pass the ball around and get good shots. 20th best in the country, top 20 at defensive assist rate. On offense, they are good, but not necessarily great. Top 50 at hitting both their threes and their twos. They have good balance in their scoring. They don't rely on any one area sort of to get their points. This isn't a team that takes a ton of threes or takes a ton of twos or gets to the free throw line in an inordinate amount. They're sort of, average at all those different areas of scoring. They do struggle a little bit at hitting hitting free throws, I should say. Only about 70% from the free throw line. Again, not terrible, but not great. They do a very good job of holding onto the ball. Top 40 at not committing turnovers. And frankly, what they do on offense is they put the ball in the hands of Terrence Edwards and let him create for himself and for other people. That dude averages 17 points per game and close to 4 assists per game. Last thing I'll mention on them in terms of the advanced metrics, fairly pedestrian at rebounding. They're like, equally okay, but not great at both ends of the floor. TJ Bickerstaff is the guy who cleans up the glass for them, getting about 8.5 rebounds per game. And he's one of the best defensive rebounding guys, one of the best defensive rebounding rates in the country, top 20. And then last thing I'll mention is that size is a little bit of experience for them. Their top shot blocker is a guard who's 6'4", who frankly doesn't get that many shots blocked. They're just not a big team. Bickerstaff, who's 6'9", is the only guy over 6'8", and he's not really a shot blocker. So Duke will have an advantage in size at most of the positions on the floor. And Donald, we can get into the players now, but we should just mention super experienced, like all these guys, all their starters, they start 3 fifth-year seniors, a 4th-year senior, and a sophomore. And their top sub is a 5th-year senior. Like their top 6 guys in terms of getting minutes, 5 of those 6 guys are 4th or 5th-year seniors. This is just an incredibly experienced team.
Before we get fully into the players, I want to go back to something that you mentioned. You mentioned that they're a team that doesn't allow you, they basically want to square up with you and just go one-on-one and kind of be, kind of have that kind of defense. They don't let you move the ball around. It's because they play athletic. They may not be the most athletic team, but they play athletically. They play hand in your face, like, I don't want to say street ball style of play, but it's that sort of intensity, right? They take pride in asking you, hey, Jason, come on, take the ball, man, bring it up. And they want you to be forced into a position where you like kind of have to go and say, I need to just go ahead and cross this dude over to shut him up. And again, they force you into doing something bad with the basketball or getting out of the flow of your offense that way. So that's how they play. And you mentioned, as we move into the players, you started with Terrence Edwards. I actually want to start with TJ Bickerstaff because Duke fans should be very familiar with TJ Bickerstaff. He transferred from Boston College. We saw him play Duke just last couple of years. But he is a guy that, like you mentioned, not the biggest guy in the world, but plays like it at times. Again, he can really rebound. He has great footwork in the paint, especially on defense, to kind of turn around and lock you out so that he can go get the rebound. And he'll also add points and assists as well. He even does steals, 1.1 steals per game, and shoots 62% from the floor. So every time he goes to the rack, he's trying to go to the rack hard, get to the, either get the basket or maybe get to the line. He's not like a great free throw shooter, but he wants those opportunities to knock down free buckets.
Yeah, and you're forgiven as a Duke fan if you don't remember a lot of TJ Bickerstaff at Boston College, because he had very pedestrian games against Duke when he played for BC. He had 9 points in one game But the other two, he played Duke a total of 3 times. The other 2 times he played Duke, he didn't score in either of those games. So, yeah, this is a guy who's used to ACC competition and knows, some of these players on this Duke team, but hasn't been, not like he was super effective at BC. He's been way better since he went to James Madison this year.
Yeah, and Terrence Edwards is the guy who's going to lead them from a scoring perspective. He scores, as you mentioned, 17 points a game, 4 rebounds a game, 3.5 assists per game, shoots 35% from 3. One of the couple free throw shooters that they do have that's really good, he shoots 82% from the line. So he's going to be the one that you don't want to put on the line. And you look at some of their 3-point shooters, Noah Friedel, Michael Green, Terrence Edwards, Xavier Brown, and Julian Wooden. Those are the guys who are going to be shooting the bulk of the threes. And from those guys, Noah Friedel shoots about 37%. Julian Wooden is the guy we got to watch out for. He shoots close to 41% from 3. And so when you're looking at that, again, they, like you mentioned, Jason, they're much more balanced on offense than Vermont is. They're not going to be shooting 53s or anything like that, but they are going to take their opportunities. So we got to make sure our perimeter defense is on point with those guys.
Yeah. By the way, we need to pay attention when Michael Green comes in the game off the bench. He doesn't get a ton of minutes for them. He's like their super sub. He's kind of like their Vinnie Johnson. He's listed at 6'0". Frankly, I think that he's a little shorter than 6 feet. Only weighs about 155 pounds, although he's pretty solid. He is a guy who's capable of really heating up very, very quickly. In their past 5 games, he's had 3 games where he reached double digits in scoring. And again, this is a guy who's playing less than 20 minutes per game and is reaching double digits in scoring. He can get hot fast. He takes a lot of 3-pointers and has been shooting really great lately. I worry about him coming off the bench. And then the other thing is I'm not sure who Duke's going to have that matches up on Edwards. Maybe you try Mark Mitchell on him, maybe Tyrese Proctor. That dude is a problem, and he creates for everybody else. This is a matchup that really, really concerns me. This is a guy he was player of the year in their conference. He is absolutely capable of going off and just disrupting your defense again and again and again. They're going to put the ball in his hands and rely on him to create. And he's the perfect size to sort of be a problem. He's 6'6". I think he might be a little too big and long for our guards. Again, maybe Proctor. And he may be a little too quick for Mark Mitchell. If JMU wins, and believe me, they have a definite chance of winning. Jay Billis just picked them on ESPN a couple of minutes ago. They absolutely, a lot of people think that James Madison is going to win this game. Seth Davis said that they were going to make the Sweet 16 the moment he saw the bracket announced. If they win, it's going to be because Edwards controlled the game on offense for them and created problems for Duke. In a variety of different ways.
I think also when you look at their bench, they have 8 guys who play 10 plus minutes a game. Their bench minutes is fairly high. 33.4% of their minutes come from their bench. And they actively participate with guys with 2 fouls. So even if guys get into foul trouble in the first half, you're going to see them maybe stay in the game. But when you see the guys on the bench, I mentioned Xavier Brown, Jalen Carey, Raekwon Horton, those are the guys that you're going to see quite a bit off the bench that are coming in and are active. First of all, Raekwon Horton, one of the greatest names in college basketball, but I digress. But when it comes to those 3 guys, you're going to see a lot of them come off the bench, and they're going to be the guys that try to get active and keep you at bay while the starters get their rest.
Dude, you just said the name Jalen Carey and you didn't point it out. You didn't mention it. Jalen Carey is Vernon Carey's little brother.
Yes. I was going to let you do it. I saw you perk up, and I was like, I'm let him say it.
Let me get the Jalen Carey. By the way, looks identical to Vernon. I mean, everything about him.
Not as tall.
Right. He's a little shorter, not a lot, but a little bit shorter than than Vernon. Jalen Carey, by the way, he's their only freshman. As you mentioned, he plays a significant role off the bench for them. He averages 7 points, 4 rebounds per game. He's not nearly as good a shooter as his older brother is. Just hits 51% of his free throws. Not really a good 3-point shooter. Vernon, could get a little bit outside the lane there. Jalen's mostly operating around the basket in the lane, but he is a key front court reserve, and he's their thickest. He's their heaviest defensive player. I think it's very likely that you'll see them try to use him to push on Kyle Filipowski, maybe keep Flip away from the bucket a little bit. He's going to play a role in this game. I wonder who Vernon's rooting for. Probably his brother, not his old alma mater. But believe me, Duke fans, you're going to see Jalen Carey out there. You're going to be like, that guy looks familiar. He's Vernon's little brother.
If Vernon Carey's in the crowd tomorrow and he's wearing his brother's jersey with a Duke hat on, we will totally understand that. That's family right there. So we're not going to be mad at him for that. But hopefully he can then, maybe after we win, if we do that, we're able to give his brother a little bit of trash talk in the family chat, group chat, so to speak. Jason, before we wrap up.
Well, I was going to say last note I have on James Madison, just really quickly. Mark Byington, their coach, has an ACC connection. He was Bobby Cremins' top assistant for close to a decade at College of Charleston, and is still very, very close to Cremins. Now, it wasn't when Cremins was at Georgia Tech, but it was when he was at Charleston. But Mark Byington, over his career, was an assistant at Virginia Tech, and I think also at Virginia. Yeah, I believe that's the case. He was an assistant at Virginia Tech, just right before he got this job. And Mark Byington is a guy who knows the ACC really well. And it's worth noting that one of Bobby Cremins' sons is also an assistant coach at James Madison. Byington, I think, is a guy who, I don't know if he wants to get a bigger job, but he is someone who certainly has coached his way into being in the conversation for power conference jobs. And he has a big moment here, big moment here against Duke in a game where a lot of people think that James Madison absolutely could win this game and make the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people have that in their brackets, Jason. And speaking of brackets, Jason, let's quickly talk about very quickly the first round, how it went. There was a lot of upsets in this thing. 22 million brackets on ESPN's Tournament Challenge. 0 were perfect after the first 2 days, and it's because there was a lot of them out there. First of all, shout out Auburn Hills, Michigan, Oakland County, Oakland University. They beat number 3 Kentucky. That's probably the biggest upset of the round. But again,
it was.
But it's weird because it's kind of shadowed. It's joined in the shadow with Yale taking out Auburn, James Madison taking out Wisconsin. Obviously, Grand Canyon on the last game of the night, they take down St. Mary's. Jason, if you look at the bracket, we talked about some of these upset picks that people wanted to take. Hope you took an 11 seed because 3 of the 4 11 seeds won in the first round. NC State, Duquesne, and Oregon. Only New Mexico, who a lot of people picked to beat Clemson. Clemson looked very, very good in that. And I will say, outside of UVA putting up 42 points in the playing game and losing by 27, losing by 25, ACC in the actual 64-team bracket, 4-0 in the first round.
Yeah, so here are the conference records, just so you have them. The Pac-12, which will no longer exist after this tournament. The Pac-12 is 5-0. Big East is 3-0. By the way, how did the Big East only get 3 teams in the tournament?
They had like 5 teams like on the first 4 out.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Big East 3-0. Probably deserved another team in the tournament. ACC is 4-1. Big 10 is 4-2. Big 12 is 5-3. And then we get to it. The Mountain West is 3-4, and the SEC is 3-5. Ouch! Not good records.
And it was, and the 3 of them I think came yesterday. Like the first day they were winless. Like the SEC, including that, like once you got to the Arbor game, like the SEC was not doing well. But again, there's a lot of double-digit seeds here. 14 seed, 13, 2 12s, 3 11s, and a 10. But Jason, I bring that up really quickly because there's a corollary here between what Duke's road is right now to the Sweet 16 and what it was back in 2016. If you remember, we were a 4 seed in 2016. We beat UNC Wilmington, and then we had to face a 12 seeded Yale, who was the darling of the tournament at the time.
Yeah.
And we beat them to get to the Sweet 16. We have another darling 12 seed in James Madison facing us that we got to get through to get right here to where I'm at in Dallas. Jason, before we leave, I did want to make a note. On the women's side, the Duke women, they did beat 10 seed Richmond 72-61. Congratulations to them. They will play Ohio State in the second round.
Big comeback in that game. They were down early. It was not looking
They were
good.
down early and came back, and it was very, very good to see them respond with that and get the win by double digits, kind of running away. They will face Ohio State in Columbus, which is a tall task. And I want to say thank you to Regina Lee. I misspoke on the last episode. I said that the Duke women had not been in the tournament since 2018. I totally blanked on that because last year they were in the tournament as a 3 seed. They hosted Colorado in the round of 32 and lost in overtime in a debacle that had just wiped away from my memory because it was so bad. But second round here, they get a chance to kind of redeem themselves by going up against a 2 seed and beating a really good Ohio State team. You know, I hate saying that, but they are very good. So if they can do that, they will be on to the Sweet 16. So hopefully they're doing that again. Their game is also on Sunday, but we will wrap it here on this episode of the Duke Basketball Roundup. Again, Duke men's basketball, 5:15 p.m. Eastern time on CBS. Sunday, late afternoon, we take on JMU. Get your headlines in after the game, preferably, but whenever you feel like it, dbrpodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget, we have a bunch of affiliate links on our link tree. Go to their linktree.com/dbrpodcast. We thank you so much for listening. For Jason Evans, I am down the line, and now it is time for the Duke Band to play us out and take us home. March Madness, baby. Survive in advance.
Let's go, Duke. No Dukes.
No Dukes.